This is Ashley with SurrogateFirst. I'm a 4-time surrogate and the intake director, and I have Jasenia Latore with us today, who is an experienced surrogate and our surrogate educator. We also have Chelsea Henderson, who is an experienced surrogate and very familiar with the surrogacy risks. We are excited to cover this topic. I'm gonna, Jasenia, would you like to introduce yourself? And then Chelsea, if you'd like to go next, and then we'll give them a little bit of what we'll be covering today, also how to find these videos afterwards. But we thank you guys for being here for SurrogateFirst presenting surrogacy risks.
So I just want to introduce myself to everybody that is viewing. My name is Jasenia Latore, and I am a former one-time surrogate, and I'm also a one-time egg donor. I have just completed my surrogacy journey around 6 months ago, and I shared it online. I have a big TikTok following of 222,000 people that watched my surrogacy journey, and it truly has changed my life. I work with SurrogateFirst now as their surrogacy educator, and I love to teach people about surrogacy and just to reduce the stigmas around it and all the misconceptions.
Awesome, I appreciate that. Chelsea, would you like to introduce yourself?
Hey everyone, I'm Chelsea Henderson. I'm an intake coordinator here at SurrogateFirst. I'm also a one-time experienced surrogate. I carried a little girl for a couple in France about 9 months ago. I really love my job and helping other women with their journeys, and I'm very passionate about this subject. My future in surrogacy was kind of cut off short due to the risks, and I ended up having a hysterectomy.
Thank you so much for sharing a little bit about that. What we are going to do today is we're going to be covering a number of topics. I'd love to be able to introduce our agency real quick so that we can get started with the process. SurrogateFirst was established in 2018. We have a team of over 15 at this point across 8 different states, and we were able to help just under 100 families last year. We are big on education and our health and wellness program for our surrogates, along with our first annual surrogate retreat that I'm super excited about that's coming up. We definitely love to love on our surrogates, also our intended parents. So we do have a lot of support for our intended parents. And we have a no match, no fee policy, which basically means that there is no monies that intended parents are required to put down until there is an actual match, including your clinic reviewing the records. And so we believe that's a great way to run our company, to show you our core values, and make sure that you're comfortable with us before you commit. Today we'll be covering a few things. Jasenia, would you like to cover those topics that we'll be covering? And that'd be amazing if you could.
Yes. So today we're going to be talking about the risks when it comes to physical, emotional, the financial and legal risks, and for intended parents, their own set of risks. So there's lots of risks when it comes to surrogacy that many people might not know about unless you are in the industry like us. I know when I decided to be a surrogate, I really didn't know about any of these risks. I didn't really think that they were common. And now that I've been in the industry, I realize that they are more common than you might think, but there are ways that you can be able to protect yourself at the end of the day.
Definitely. And I think it's very strange for an agency to be covering the risks. We're trying to have surrogates sign up with us and to match people. But in all honesty, I believe that SurrogateFirst is more about making sure that you have, an educated decision when becoming a surrogate. We think it's really important that you're aware of those risks. Clearly, all 3 of us sitting here have done the research and experienced it. And so we want to make sure that we give you that opportunity. While I would never change any of my journeys, it's important to know those risks, but I made that decision knowing those, those factors. And Chelsea, would you say the same thing that, we'll get into your story in a minute, but would you say the same thing that even though you went through such a traumatic experience, would you still do it again, knowing that that would be the outcome?
I would definitely do it again if I could. I didn't fully understand the medical risks when I did it the first time. I understand that it wasn't my fault and some things are inevitable. I feel like if I would have been better educated, I just felt like I could have took care of myself even better. But although what happened to me, it wasn't surrogacy related, it was kind of more operation related. I still am very passionate about helping people understand the risks. I still 100% recommend people to do surrogacy if that's their dream. I just think that they should be further educated on the subject.
Oh, of course. And I think that's why you are such a valuable asset to our team, is that you're in the intake department. So as these women are applying, you're able to touch them and communicate with them and educate them so that when they decide to sign those documents to start the screening process, they're aware that there are risks and they've made that decision that they're still willing to move forward. So we appreciate you here at Surrogate First.
Thank you.
Awesome. So we'll get started. Would you like to, Jasenia, kind of cover these basic ones, and then I'll stop sharing so we can kind of discuss them, because this is where Chelsea is so valuable to us to explain her experience.
So on the slide, we're talking about all the physical risks for surrogacy. So it has to do with all different types of pregnancy complications. So there are some like preeclampsia, hypertension, preterm labor are just a few of them. IVF, being allergic to the IVF medications, that many people might not think that this could be a risk. You could be allergic to any type of medication, but also gestational diabetes, placenta abnormalities, having a C-section, organ loss, which you can lose your reproductive organs, having a miscarriage or having secondary infertility, or a termination due to illness or multiples, or like the worst one is death. But these are all risks in any type of pregnancy, but sometimes since it is a surrogacy related thing, you go through the process of IVF, some of these risks can be heightened.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you. Chelsea, would you like to kind of share a little bit about your experience, and then we can kind of talk about that, and feel free to share whatever you're comfortable with. Like, you don't have to go into too many details, but we would love to kind of hear how you got into surrogacy, and then where you experienced the risks.
Yeah, of course. I had a very healthy pregnancy up until the 3rd trimester with my surro baby. I ended up getting preeclampsia and high blood pressure issues, so I had to be induced at 36 weeks. I had a C-section, and during the C-section, parts of the placenta were left behind. And I walked around with those parts for about 2 weeks, and then they figured it out, and I went to get a DNC procedure done to remove those parts of the placenta, but that didn't work. The parts of it were attached to my uterus. They call it placenta accreta. So I had to get a full hysterectomy. They took my uterus and my tubes. And then during the hysterectomy, an artery was nicked, and I ended up in the ICU with about less than 5% of my blood in my body. So it was a lot of back-to-back terrible incidents. And at the beginning, I would like to say preeclampsia was like, this is a risk that you can look for in surrogacy. But the things that led after that, I would like to say, was more like procedure issues, hospital issues. But you take these risks regardless whenever you do have a baby, when you get pregnant, when you go to an OB. I'm really passionate about making sure that people go to a good OB and that they get the best care possible, and just always listen to your gut and listen to your body and stand up for yourself.
I appreciate that so much. And that's important
Yes,
to talk about. Jasenia, did you want to share a little bit?
Yes, I was going to say that I know so many people that ask me, like, why can't I be a surrogate if I had preeclampsia? And I always give them the answer that we don't want you putting your life at risk to be a surrogate. Mm-hmm. We value you as individuals. We value as a mother to your own children, and we don't want to take you away from that to become a surrogate. So we don't want to put your life at risk. And it's really important to consider all of these.
Definitely. And, like you were saying, that's the importance of having those requirements and those guidelines to follow with age and BMI and pregnancy history and even mental health history, because you don't know how you're going to react to the IVF medications, and you don't know how your body's going to react. Speaking of the preeclampsia, I know for myself, I had, done a bunch of research, and my IVF doctor had mentioned, aspirin, taking aspirin on a daily basis at 80 milligrams, a low dose aspirin, from before 12 weeks of gestation all the way through like 32, 36 weeks, lowers your chances of like hypertension and preeclampsia by like 70%.
Yeah.
And so that's so important to know that, like, to counterbalance that. And unfortunately, we are such a small population as surrogates that there's not a lot of research on like the IVF and the surrogacy side of complications. I do see there's a small raise from surrogates to women who are naturally carrying their babies. But for me, it wasn't a high enough risk to not do it. And I met with, and that's the importance of like meeting with your OB and talking to them about your history and finding out, at the end of the day, surrogacy is about helping another family, grow and become parents. And sometimes we have to accept that we might not be the safest candidate for that family, but also for ourselves. Like, I can't imagine what you were going through, Chelsea, when you're in the ICU and you've got babies at home. It had to be super scary for you and your husband, and so you're like, honestly, your like story is like one of the ones I've heard. Like, that was like, like, it's not very often that you hear these stories and these complications being so extreme. But I'm so thankful that you made it through. I remember like we were trying to figure out how to fly out to you and like be with your family. We're like, well, babysit, whatever we can do to help you.
Yeah, everybody was very amazing, super helpful. I had a lot of support, and it was just amazing. I had time to heal from it physically and mentally, and then I jumped right back into the surrogacy world, and now I'm helping other people with their journeys, and that's so fulfilling to me. It really is.
Oh, that's so beautiful.
In my life. Yeah,
it's beautiful.
Now, let's see. I'm gonna just click on to the next one. There we go. Emotional risks. Would you like to kind of cover that, Jasenia?
Yes, so there are many different type of emotional risks when you're pregnant and in surrogacy. So you can have postpartum grief and loss if you suffered a miscarriage or pregnancy loss. You could experience relationship strains with your intended parents, your spouse, your kids, or anybody else in your family or anybody. Stress and anxiety and depression during or after the pregnancy, or hormonal imbalance after birth. So I feel like I can connect with this one because I feel during the surrogacy pregnancy for me, I had a lot more anxiety than I did with my own children. I was worried, what if I have a miscarriage? It would be devastating for the family. What if something happens to the baby? I was always worried at every single appointment. I think it elevated the stress because knowing that it wasn't my child and I was really trying to do this for a family. So I can definitely understand people having anxiety going through the process.
Oh yeah, like I have parents all the time ask, like, how do we know that the surrogate is going to be like safe with our baby and she's going to, she's going to take care of her baby? And I always explain to them, like, one, the process to become a surrogate is long and it's in depth, and so when you make it through the screening process, you've been through the agency has looked at a lot of those options. But two, I have never been so worried about a pregnancy because it wasn't mine. Like, so like I get that, because I remember bumping my belly like on a corner. You know how you're like clumsy, and like I took a corner and didn't realize how big I was at one point. And I was like, oh my God, I hope he's like no concussion, and like I was always the doctor extra. I was having my nurse friends come over and like for a heartbeat. I didn't feel him kick, like, and even eating wise, like with my own kids, I think I survived off like lihimui gummy bears, which are like this Hawaii thing. But with this baby, I was like, I have to eat vegetables. I have to make it well-rounded. Like these parents are counting on me, especially when I transferred like I had one parent that only had one embryo. And I was like, this is it. Like, we have to do everything. And the truth is, like, there's nothing I can do as long as I follow the doctor's orders to like make it a better chance of success. But man, there was a lot of worry with that.
And I was going to say another one is like grief and pregnancy loss, because a lot of people don't understand that miscarriages are so common and pregnancies all around the world. I believe it's like 1 in 4 pregnancies result in a miscarriage. And that's something that many people might not think about. They might not think about they're going to lose the baby 10 weeks in. And even as a surrogate, even knowing that it might not be our child, we're still going to care. We're still going to be sad. We're still going to go through all of those emotions. And so I think it's really important to take charge of your mental health. Even we pass the psych evaluations, we go through all of those things. But if you want to talk to a therapist, you should do so.
Yeah.
And most of the time, your agencies have those resources available.
Oh, I completely agree with you. I have seen a mental health professional all for surrogacies and afterwards too, and then even family sessions, so I can make sure that my family's processed the end of the surrogacy and no one's like leaving with like, bad, like, sad emotions or hurt or anything like that. We want to make sure everyone is like good in my family. So yeah, take advantage of that. There is no shame in getting professional help. I think it's definitely good for mental health to be able to have those check-ins with a professional and someone who's been through surrogacy, or making sure that they don't have their own agenda when it comes to surrogacy is important too. What about for like relationship strains?
Well, I see this mostly to do with spouses or intended parents, because while we would love to have a great relationship with our intended parents, that might not be the case every time. People change, people have emotions. So I always say, like, try to work things out with your intended parents, try to be open and understanding, because it is an emotional time for them as well as it is for you, the surrogates. So that might be hard. And sometimes you might need to look to your agency to help resolve or look for a resolution, or even like problems with your spouse. Like, there are so many different problems. Maybe they don't like you being pregnant, or they didn't understand how intense the process was going to be. They didn't understand they might have to deal with you postpartum and all these different things. So it's definitely important to make an informed decision before going into surrogacy. Make sure that your husband or spouse or partner is on board and they understand everything.
Yeah.
That support is definitely everything.
Yes.
What about, so like, I know for myself, the IVF medications, the first 3 times I felt like it wasn't bad. Like it didn't like affect me, but the 4th time, that Lupron, man, my husband, some of the like intrusive thoughts I had because of my hormones. Did you guys have any effects with the IVF medications or not really? Or was that more physical?
It's a lot to go through, all the IVF medications. I had a lot of fear even going into them, and just how they affect you physically and mentally. For me, that was the hardest part, getting over a fear of needles. And I know that there's a lot of hormones and stuff involved. I did find myself crying a lot more often than with my son, but I was also carrying a girl, and that was the first time for that too. But definitely just getting in the motion of being able to take all these medications, doing them at the exact right time, is a lot on you physically and mentally, especially with those injections.
Definitely. And I think having a good support system, picking the right agency, that's going to be there to like educate and care for you, and then having that support around you of family and friends. And also surro sisters, I think, like having that community of surrogates who have been there to kind of cheer you on and also let you vent sometimes is so important.
Yes.
Now, the next thing would be legal. So financial and legal risks that can happen to, with surrogacy.
Yes. So in the financial and legal risks, it could be like surrogacy contract disputes or missing benefits for surrogates, or people breaching the contract. That could be the intended parents or the gestational surrogates. International surrogacy and immigration issues, or health insurance and medical bills. So Ashley, can you tell me some more information about all these?
Yeah, definitely. Your agency normally will have a surrogates benefit package that you're able to kind of customize. Keeping that and printing that out is so valuable. If you're going independent, you really want to make sure that before you even go for medical screening or even into the legal, part of the process that you and your parents have agreed upon a very in-depth compensation agreement. So that way, you know, you're protected, they're protected, you guys have all agreed upon it. I see a lot of times where maybe accidentally an attorney may leave out a benefit. It could be something to do with the mileage reimbursement or what monthly allowance covers, or, you know, or the payment plan when your base compensation is paid out and things like that. So it's definitely important to, one, have your own legal counsel. The intended parents would pay for that, but you want to make sure you have someone separate than your parents. They can't represent two people. You want to have that balance. The other thing is making sure you guys have already agreed upon termination, communication, vaccination, you know, delivery, all of those items. You want to make sure you agree upon them in that match meeting while you're talking and getting to know each other, whether that's through the agency or independent. And then, you know, I mean, that's going to definitely be the safest bet. The other thing is, as surrogates, you got to read your contracts. I know they're 40 pages long. You do have an attorney, but your job is to review the contract, flag anything that you have questions or it doesn't make sense. And when you meet with your agent, your attorney, go over those items so that you and your partner understand exactly what's in there, so that if there needs to be changes, it could be things with travel restrictions or termination or activities you can and can't do. Like, you want to make sure those things were discussed prior, but you also want to make sure they're in the contracts. Once you agree to that, if you don't follow that, if you decide to go rogue and go on a trip when it wasn't part of your agreement, or you decide to, I don't know, go horseback riding, or, you know, ride your motorcycle or water slides or whatever it could be, you could be in breach of contract, which means you could be sued for the monies that were paid out plus the monies that were lost. It's very rare that that occurs, but the same thing with parents. You know, they would breach contract if they don't properly keep the amount of money that's supposed to be in escrow, or that bills don't get paid in a timely manner that there is their responsibility. So you can have it both ways, where both parties could breach the contract. It's very rare. I've experienced it and seen it a couple times, but it was more so like not realizing it was a breach of contract, and things were corrected very, you know, very quickly on both parties. And then on the international and surrogacy side, with immigration issues, it's important that you talk to your attorneys about where your parent is from, making sure that you understand some states or some countries will require you to be on the birth certificate in order for them to go back to their home country, complete all their documentation, and then remove you from the birth certificate. So you want to make sure that you understand those items, and understand that you still don't have parental rights. It's just part of the process. And then for parents, it's important that they understand and meet with with an attorney in their country about the surrogacy journey, so they know exactly what needs to happen, what states they can match in, what types of surrogates they're able to work with. And what I mean is like marital statuses, that kind of, you know, is important. Also understanding that international surrogacy in some countries is really on the fence right now. It was okay in Italy, and now there is a bunch of complications when it comes to Italy for surrogacy. And so understanding those things with your attorney is been paid for, so that you can then discuss some of these things with them so that you can understand it too. And then the biggest one is health insurance and medical bills. If you're going independent, you really want to make sure that that insurance review was completed by a third party like Art Risk or International Fertility Insurance, so that they can tell you if it's surrogate friendly or not. You know, understanding when special enrollments, ACA is, because those medical bills, when they first come out, are going to be in the surrogate's name. So understanding there's enough money in escrow to pay those bills, having that support. If you're going independent, it's important you pick up a program that, you know, IFI or Art Risk has available that can monitor, making sure all the bills are correct and they've been processed through insurance. But that's one of the biggest risks I see, or one of the most common risks, is making sure that all medical bills get paid. And a way to you know, like to make sure that you kind of counterbalance that is turning in those medical bills within that first 30 days that you receive them. As soon as you do, turn them into escrow to get paid. Because I've seen where someone holds on to bills for 6 months or a year, your contract's going to clearly state to turn them in as soon as you receive them within 30 days. And then there are rogue bills. So maybe a year after you deliver, you get a random LabCorp bill for like $200. Parents are still responsible for those bills. So making sure that you have either you're in touch with your agency, with the intended parents or the attorneys that you guys had, just to be able to, hey, this bill needs to get paid, and then making sure that gets paid.
Yeah, I think the one that I see most is like the medical bills. I think that is definitely the one that I see the most. Or if like parents back out at the last minute for independent journeys and the potential surrogate is stuck with all the medical bills and it was before contract. So what do they do in those scenarios?
Yeah, so on the independent side, having something in writing that confirms that the parents will be responsible for all like labs and medicals bills before you get through legal is definitely important in that aspect. A lot of times with agencies, they'll already have like an escrow set up with like $10,000 to cover, medical screening and legal process, and then it be fully funded after legal. Some agencies will require a full 100% of what the cost would be into the escrow before that. So with an agency, you have that kind of protection, or you should have that kind of protection. But yeah, definitely it's important to understand those items. And then also, speak with your attorneys again to find out how do you protect yourselves at the end to make sure. But like we were saying, it's that escrow, having a third party escrow. I would say the biggest financial and legal risks I see on the independent side is not having separate legal counsel, not having a fully funded escrow, not having a mental health professional in place to kind of help and be that mediator, because you want to make sure that there's enough money in there to cover if something was to complication. Maybe an IP passed away, maybe they lost their job. Like it would be very hard to be, in the middle of your surrogacy and find out there is no monies and now you've got medical bills. And I mean, just so many complications that can occur. So yeah, definitely. Just protect yourselves, people. Oh, and we were talking about intended parents and, what can happen too for them. Chelsea, would you like to kind of just go over the topics we have on here?
Yeah, so we have failed transfers, broken match, late term loss, complications, rematching costs, missing delivery, and NICU medical bills.
Yes.
And the average surrogacy right now, what I'm seeing across the board from just my personal research, and again, I'm not a professional in the aspect of like knowing everything about surrogacy, but I'm seeing a lot of agencies quote between like 125 to 150 for an average $1,000 for an average surrogacy journey, without complications, going upwards of 200,000 if there's complications. And so it's important for parents to realize that, monies that are paid out to a surrogate prior to the loss of pregnancy are paid to her, and that's null and void. And her base compensation starts over with the next pregnancy. It's per pregnancy that it can occur. Same thing with like the broken matches. Unfortunately, in all honesty, if a surrogate breaks the match at legal, there's been monies paid out for medical screenings and legal. And if it's at no fault of the intended parents, legally, they would be able to have their attorney, potentially request reimbursement, or at the worst case scenario, have a civil suit to get that monies back. But that's going to be extremely hard and cost monies to be represented legally too. So, that is something you want to make sure that you're as a surrogate, you're very invested in this. Moving forward, that you're committed, and as intended parents, you want to make sure you're committed and invested too, and that you guys have really discussed all the hard topics to make sure that there's a lower chance of like a break in legal and things like that.
Yes. And I was going to say also like late term loss, which is really a devastating subject to talk about. But if an intended family, say they spend almost $200,000 for the process and then they have a late term loss, they're going to have to start all over again. And that's something that we can't predict. And it's just really devastating because we don't really know what's going to happen. But what was that thing that we seen at Seeds, Ashley, for late term loss support for parents and surrogates?
Oh, is it London is the reason?
Yes, London is the reason is what we learned about, and they have resources for parents and surrogates that have dealt with pregnancy loss to help support them in times of need.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I mean, first and foremost, the risk of like not bringing home your baby. And a lot of these parents, contrary to what media would like to share and the rich and famous stories you see of all these famous people, a lot of intended parents are refinancing their homes. They're pulling their retirements, their 401ks, like they are doing everything and anything, taking on second, third jobs to be able to pay for the surrogacy process. And so sometimes this is the only chance they have, you know, and so there are those risks to understand. And while they are far and few between, it's important to understand what you're going into and have that educated consent. Medical bills, NICU bills, that's super important. So I had a surrogate who had an embryo split. And that embryo, those two babies were born at like 34 weeks, 33 and like almost 34 weeks. And the parents were international and they did have an a newborn insurance policy, but the deductible on it was like 15,000 each baby. Wow. And they paid like 15,000 for the plan. So like $45,000 later for medical bills and then to have the babies in the NICU, but the actual bills, because I took care of it, was well over $300,000. I'm talking, it was closer to 400,000 for those babies to be in the NICU for a couple weeks. And so that's a risk parents need to understand too, is, most babies are born healthy and no complications, and you can cash pay delivery if you chose, but there are risks involved if you don't have newborn insurance. Oh, so how to protect yourselves. Now we've kind of went through this the whole entire webinar, but maybe just any you could kind of cover these items just to like as a takeaway.
Yes. So this is how to protect yourself. So using a reputable agency. So in many cases, using a reputable agency is going to protect you in so many ways that you guys don't understand. But using a reputable agency is really important. Taking low-dose aspirin to reduce the risks of preeclampsia and other pregnancy complications. I was on low-dose aspirin as well for my whole surrogacy pregnancy, and make sure you meet ASMR surrogacy guidelines. So this is just being overall in good health before becoming a surrogate. It's having a certain number of pregnancies, having a certain BMI, because we want to make sure you're going into surrogacy as healthy as possible, because we don't want to put any risk to your life. Which one is this one, Ashley?
Follow the ACOG's recommendations. The reason we put that on here, so you have ASRM and they kind of create that's the American Society of Reproductive Medicine's guidelines for surrogacy. And then you have ACOG, who is for obstetricians, their recommendations. While I see a lot of surrogates, we give birth, we're super excited, we want to sign back up. It's so important to have that spacing. And they actually recommend 18 months in between, pregnancy and pregnancy, because your body is depleted of nutrients. And what we see is when people have babies close together, back to back, within 6 months, a year of each other, getting pregnant 6 months to a year, it can affect placenta issues. And so it can cause premature deliveries. And so it's really important to make sure you're at the top of your health when you're going into this, because even though parents are counting on you, your family is counting on you to come home after the surrogacy and be healthy and happy. And so we want to just make sure we take care of that. Again, it is educated consent. So we can tell these things to people, we can give this information, but at the end of the day, our surrogates and our intended parents have to make that decision.
And also going on with having a diet and exercise. So just eating healthy because of the increase of health risks while being pregnant and doing IVF. And also using an experienced surrogacy attorney. You definitely want your attorney to pick apart your contract. You want them to go over it a bunch of times, making sure that you understand everything. You don't want a type of attorney that's just like, oh, it sounds good. I remember giving my my lawyer going over my contract, and I reviewed it the first time and I was like, oh, it looks pretty good. But then they had paragraphs and paragraphs and paragraphs of all these changes. So it's really important that you have an experienced surrogacy attorney, and you can find one on your own, or your agency can help you find one in most cases. And also enrolling in newborn health insurance is really important, from what we were just talking about, having a baby in NICU and having all those medical bills racking up, and having a fully funded escrow, life insurance and lost organ rider in place, and your family being completed. Yes.
Do you have any other, Chelsea, do you have any recommendations too that you would, potentially add to this list?
Yeah, well, for me, mainly, I just want to make sure that everybody fully has support, because this isn't, especially the people in your household, it's really important to make sure that your children and your spouse understands fully. To me, my fiance got me through it in more ways than I could even imagine. I was scared of needles. He always did my injections for me. There's all kinds of books that you can read to your kids to help them understand, like my pee, their pod, or wait, my pod, their pee, right, in the kangaroo pouch. So there's lots of awesome ways to just help everybody around you understand, and then just having that support, it makes you very mentally able to go through it too, because it is a lot, and it's important to have that support.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Just anything.
Yeah, and I think I would add to the list. Yes, sorry. I was gonna say, I think it's really important to do research. I don't think I added that to the list, but doing your research on surrogacy, period, because many people, they hear about surrogacy and they're so excited to sign up, but doing your research for different agencies, doing your research for different attorneys, doing research for the laws in your state or in your country. So taking the time and doing the research and making sure you're making educated decisions when doing something so serious, because I know this was around 18 months of my life, and I didn't expect for the process to be so long. And so I was just like going with the flow, learning as I went. So doing your research is extremely important. And also speaking with other surrogates is a great way, talking to different agencies and professionals.
Awesome. So in conclusion, understanding the risk involved in surrogacy is crucial because it allows all parties to make informed and responsible decisions. By being aware of the physical, emotional, financial, legal, and any other potential challenges, everyone can be better prepared and address any issues that may arise. You definitely put that so well. Like, I love how you pose things. So here's a couple things. If you're interested in learning more, there is the IP profile that you can start, and that would allow us to contact you, talk to you about the process, the timelines, the compensations, the cost of everything. And for the IP consultation, if parents wanted to meet with us, I will post up the gestational carriers QR codes so that you're interested. I apologize for this. So if you wanted to get a hold of myself, Ashley, you would reach out to Ashley at surrogatefirst.com. My direct line is 424-567-3703. You can also reach us on any of our social medias. Starting out the process as a surrogate, just to be able to complete like an initial application, which is about 20 questions that ask the most common disqualifying questions. That sets you up to be able to talk and have a consult with one of our surrogate coordinators. You also want to make sure that you can meet with us. Even if you don't fill that out, you can visit www.surrogatefirst.com. Again, that's surrogatefirst.com. And there is an option in several pages that allows you to meet with us. We have a frequently asked questions section. You can also see this video when we're completed. You'll be able to find that on YouTube on our Surrogate First page. We also will have anyone who registered for the webinar and then and was not able to make it or even made it, we'll send you out a copy of the video once we've done our little cleaning up. But Jasenia, maybe you can share how people could get a hold of you too.
Yes, so you guys can email me at Yesenia@surrogatefirst.com, and it's YESSENIA@surrogatefirst.com, or my direct line is 470-907-9957, or you can message me on Instagram or any social media platforms.
And then, yeah, sorry. And then you can email me at Chelsea@surrogatefirst.com, or you can call me on my direct line. I'm 575-704-4012. Or whenever you apply, you have a 50-50 chance of meeting me first. It's me or our other girl, Selena. And I make myself available every day on business days to just answer my phone. And I love to just spend time with people on the phone and just make sure that they fully understand the process and what they're going to be going through. So no question is a dumb question. I just love to make sure that people fully understand.
Awesome. And in 2 weeks, we're going to be doing the how to become a surrogate webinar. So that will kind of go over what the beginning process looks like. Surrogate First has some amazing things that we've just been, able to start the process of completing. So we will have a surrogate library where you'll be able to see videos and PDFs of like every process, every step for our surrogates. Same thing for our intended parents. We also are launching, and we've been working very hard on the back end to open up a public 4th trimester support group for surrogates. And even women in need, if they're not a surrogate and they just need some like support on that end, they will be able to use our health and wellness program. We'll have a mental health professional that'll have meetings monthly just to grow that support while, at the end of our surrogacies, the risk can be postpartum. We want to be able to help balance out those hormones, return us back to our lives from where we were before. And our goal at Surrogate First is always to leave you in a better place with your, we care about your mind, body, and soul. We care about your finances. We want to make sure to help you that when you complete your journey, you walk away from it with, that was an amazing experience. And I'm thankful that I had our agency, and I'm thankful that I had my parents and my friends and family. And so that's just our goal with it. But check us out every 2 weeks. We're here. We're getting better and better as we go.
We're getting it together.
Yeah, we're pulling it up.
Yeah.
And Chelsea, thank you so much for being vulnerable. And I know that in this day and age, as surrogates, we worry about talking about the risks. We worry about talking about the bad side of things because we're worried that the community who doesn't understand surrogacy is going to attack us or tell us that we're ridiculous for doing this, or we're handmaids or whatever it is. But the truth is, we are an amazing community of women who have put our lives on hold. We've put our bodies at risk because we chose what we do with our bodies to help another family. And it is a risk and it can happen. And if people aren't talking about the risks, or they're not bringing it up or letting you know, hey, this isn't going to be rainbows and unicorns. There's going to be delays. Your life is going to be on hold. I missed I missed funerals. I missed weddings. I missed, baby parties with my family back home in Hawaii because I couldn't travel, And so if we're not educating people, if the people you're talking to aren't educating you about the process and the risks, then be concerned, because their whole attention should be about making sure that you are a safe and educated candidate who can go through this process and make, that decision on your own. So I thank everybody for this time. Jasenia, if you want to head us out, end our webinar, and I'll close up all the lives.
Yes, thank you everybody for watching. We really appreciate you guys. And don't forget to email us, or if you guys ever have any questions, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Bye.